Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Welcome everyone to the show. How is everybody doing today? Hope you're doing well. We've got some special guests with us here on the show. Sounds like somebody's got the stream playing in the background there. Is it you, Tom, or is it Vernon?
We've got some special guests with us here on the show.
Somebody does.
Not me.
Seem to have the opening continuing.
Oh, yep.
Oh, it was Tom. That's what I thought.
That's
okay.
all right.
All right. So, yeah, as soon as Tom shuts that off, and yeah, I don't know what happened there. Welcome, everybody. We have two special guests with us. We have Tom Konkle and Mr. Vernon Wells himself from the film The Road Warrior, a.k.a. Mad Max 2, as it's known in most of the world. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing fine, except I don't have Wi-Fi and my house is pulled apart. But apart from that, I'm as happy as a clam.
Yeah, unfortunately, it sounds like you've had a bit of a incident over there at your place, but hopefully you can get that fixed up real soon. But we're glad to have you at least for a little bit today to talk about the film. We're so happy to have you here.
My pleasure.
So, Script Doctor, I've had the pleasure of actually meeting Mr. Wells before. You haven't, though, correct?
No, I have not. This is the first time, but no, it's an honor because I've been a fan of his since I was a kid. Not to sort of imply that you're old, but you've had such a great, lucrative career for many years. So it's a pleasure to be able to talk to you in this platform for now, and gets your insights into this film and other things that you've done.
Well, thank you. I think I've been very lucky, actually, that I've had such a lucrative career. I always look at it and say I'm very blessed with the fact that I've been able to work for so long, and most of it's because of people like Tom, who for some strange reason have this thing about me that they want to use me in films, and which intrigues the hell out of me. But I'm a pessimist. I look at it from the other side and go, well, bugger it, I'm going to keep going until they tell me they don't want me.
That's a good. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's been an absolute. I have to jump in. It's been an absolute pleasure not only meeting him but working with him. The reason you want to work with him is he is a consummate professional. He is irreverent about the work, but very serious about it. He doesn't take himself seriously, but he really, really takes the craft. He loves movies. He loves to act. He's become a very good friend of mine. He's been there for me when I really needed him. And one of the things that sort of bonded us initially was, I will say, The Road Warrior was the first beta tape I ever bought. As a kid, I begged my parents to get a player. I saw it sitting up there with, Vernon and Mel Gibson up there, and I said, I have to have this movie. And I think it cost $70 to get the beta tape. It was back when it was very expensive. But I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker, and I saw it in the theater, and I knew I wanted to make films. And something that really struck me about Vernon is he used physicality and he used his body and he made acting choices in it that made such a memorable character. And it was such an unconventional film that it stayed with me. And he was actually the first celebrity I ever met in LA when I moved here. So it was Providence sort of moving him in. It was late 80s and I had just moved here as a kid. And I ran into Vernon and I said, one day I'm going to make a movie with you. And he's like, yeah, kid, sure. And sure enough, we ended up doing it. And something that has been a really nice surprise is that Vernon's range as an actor, either as a man who can play heroes, villains, he has a sensitivity to understanding the whole process of filmmaking. He's the kind of guy who will sit in the corner and give you crap all day, but he'll be there till 4 a.m. And then when you say, okay, we need this, 100%, he gives it 100% because to him, it's boldly going and making some film that you want to see. And with with Road Warrior, I really feel like it's a timeless film because he's part of it, and what George did with it, and the whole team around it made an unconventional film, but a timeless film.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, it was interesting. If I'd had my way, as I tell people, I never would have done Road Warrior because it was the first film I ever did, and I hadn't done virtually anything before it. And it scared the crap out of me. I mean, I didn't want to do it. It just did not appeal to me from that direction. But George Miller is one of these people, God bless him, who, when he makes up his mind about something, that's it. Basically, you can't change it. And so eventually I didn't have a choice. I had to do it. And it became an exercise in non-reality for me, that I suddenly learned how to compose something out of nothing and make it into something. And if that sounds weird, that's what it's like. It's like trying to make a portrait out of thin air. And when it's done, looking at it and saying, oh, that's pretty cool. It was that similar thing that you really had no idea if what you were doing was working, or if it was even going to look good. It was that type of thing, which, like that photo you just put up, which is probably a lot of small children's nightmares. It was just getting it to work. And I think the biggest thing in my favor was that I wasn't jaded by the business and by people telling me how I should do things and how I shouldn't do things. I did it from the gut. I had no choice. It was, I think that this would work if I did it this way. And that was exactly what I did. And, I always say, if people ask me, George Miller gave me my career, and George has the exact opposite feeling. He always says that I made my own career. I took a small part and turned it into a film. And since then, it's the same thing. I've always had that feeling that when I work, I can do no less than give 100%.
Right.
And if my 100% isn't good enough, then at least I know I have done my best. And that's it. When we did the film together, Tom and I, as Tom will tell you, there's a scene in it that's very, very brutal where I'm actually beating the crap out of him. And at one stage, it got a little bit, and I hit him by accident. And Tom was looking at me with these big eyes, and I could see it in his eyes. Don't stop, you shit. Don't stop. Keep going. Keep going. It was like, he was
keep going.
So
it's great.
what I was doing. And I was so upset that I'd hit him. When we finally said cut, I was like, oh, my God, I'm so sorry I hit you. And he said, what? He said, that was so cool.
It was perfect. You should see what it did to my jaw.
It was things like that that I think are just, and working with Tom, I have a ball. I mean, he's so easy to work with, and he allows you a lot of latitude to build on what he gives you, which I love.
Yes.
And
you make trouble better that way.
When we were working together, he said, what are 3 films that you would like to do before you stop doing
before
films,
you shuffle
or
off,
something happens, or the whole thing? What's your bucket list? So I gave him my bucket list, and it was 3 films. One was to be the pirate in Treasure Island. I've always wanted to play the pirate in Treasure Island. To me, he's not the villain. He's just this wonderful, wonderful character that's on both sides at the same time.
Exactly.
And I love
He's
him.
duplicitous.
And the other one was to be the captain of the Nautilus in 20,000 Leagues. I've always been so struck by that film that just to play that character would be so much fun. And the third one I wanted to do was do a real film about a vampire, not a 12-year-old kid playing it, but a mature man playing the character the way the character was written. And so I gave that to Tom. And so, of course, now Tom's got me chained up to the wall saying, we're doing these. You know that, right?
We are making these. And it's funny. our bucket lists aligned so much that I knew we would be lifelong friends. And something that that I love with your, the process that we do talking about it. I wondered if you did that on Road Warrior, where you and I talked. We had dinner. We talked about the character. You played Detective Tate in Trouble. When you approached Wes, is it true they filmed it in order? And when you did you help create the story, his backstory? How did you work with George, and how much before the film did you talk about?
Yeah, the whole thing was basically shot chronologically. And then what George did, which is what I learned so much from working with him. One of the things he did was he made us write a story about our character from when he was born until the film started. And we had to do this relying on what we got from the script. So we had to build a character from just what was in the script, but with a backstory that worked with what was in the script. And each day, we did this for 5 days. Each day we'd go in around a round table, and all of us would read our definition of who we thought we were and why. And then George Miller and the other two writers, Terry Hayes and the other writer, would just pull us apart and say, no,
that's right,
that's crap, chuck that out.
Yep,
that's good, keep that. And so this is what went on for 5 days. At the end of 5 days, we had built a character from the ground up. We knew exactly who we were, why we were there, what our whole life had been, and what had led us to this point in our life. And I always remember, because I was so thing that it was my first film, I would say to George sometimes, I would say, George, what do I do? And he would just look at me and go, well, what would Wes do? And I would go, well, I don't know. He'd probably rip off their arms and pee down their necks. I don't know. And George would say, well, you can rip off their arms, but can we let go with the peeing down the neck bit? So he always would make you feel that you had it, and which I always appreciated. He never took away your ability to be creative as an actor.
Yes.
And
it's so important to feel included.
A master like George in the first major film you ever do sets you up for the rest of your career, because it shows you what it is to be an actor working with a group of people on a performance.
And I actually have a question. Oh, go ahead.
And then everywhere you go, that comes with you. So, when I started working with Tom, it was the same thing. I built the character from what he gave me, and then walked in and told him how it was going to be. And he sort of looked at me and went, okay, good. That's fine. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And, that's half of a director's job is cheerleading and making everyone feel included, or I call it enrolled. Like I enrolled you in the part. When you do this pirate character in Island in the Stars, you're enrolled in that part. You're creating this new character in this sci-fi thing we're doing. Well, you built that character of Wes the same way, where you're like, you know how it is when you're really getting a character, you'd say, oh, he wouldn't do that, or he would do that. They begin to almost be someone you answer to, right? They're like another person in your head that they're like, nah, you wouldn't do that. Yeah.
Well, and I know, and it's funny how the character part of you works. I'm doing I just finished a film. I'm on a Japanese film at the moment. And in the other film that I just finished, I was playing a fallen priest. I'd been thrown out of the priesthood because of some indiscretions with young boys. So I was not a priest. I was an ex-priest. And this one of my students, a young lady that I'd known all her life, needed an exorcism because she was possessed by this demon, and she wanted me to do it. And so there's a whole long story with that. But at one stage, right towards the end, I figure out all these ways of controlling this demon and destroying it, and she does it. And what she does is she goes through like a time warp into hell to fight the demon in this church. And she said to me the next morning, I wasn't involved in that shooting. Next morning, she said, oh, God, I was thinking last night we should have had you in the church. It would have been so cool. And I went, well, you know, of course, that if I had been in the church, that I never would have been able to finish the film, because he would never have been coming out of hell. He was a fallen priest. And she just looked at me and went, oh, shit. You're right. And
You're right.
She wasn't talking to me. She was talking to the character. It was so funny because I didn't think about it. I just thought as the character. He couldn't go there because he's a fallen priest. The minute he goes into hell, he isn't coming out.
Right.
And it was so funny.
Tom,
that's the way you think about it.
Tom, you had a question?
Well, actually, we got a lot of great questions coming in from the audience, which we're going to get to here shortly. But actually, I had one that kind of went off your initial question, Tom, and that was basically, so clearly you got to work with the actual characterization of the character, but what about the look? Because the look is iconic. Did you have any say over the look at all, or was that something that was kind of preconceived before you got there?
A lot of it was preconceived. I actually had a lot of tests done with my hair. I had my hair shaved into a mohawk for like 3 months before we began filming, mostly because your head, under your hair, if you take your hair off, you get sunburnt really easy because your actual scalp is not.
I know what that's like.
It's got hair on it.
Right.
So they had to do that with me. They had to take, give me the mohawk so that my head could get used to that and I wouldn't get sunburnt when we were shooting. The rest of it was the little flap at the back was me, and I fought for about 3 weeks to get it because every time I jumped on a motorbike or anything, I had red burn marks on my cheeks and my butt. So I demanded that I have something that covered it, and I got that.
Makes sense.
The around the edge of the costume where it has all the feathers, that actually had nothing originally when we started rehearsing, and it would cut. I used to bleed because I move so much, and this thing is stiff. It doesn't move around.
Yeah.
So I would bleed. I would be just dripping, and so George said, "We got to figure something out." So they put lamb skin on it,
Oh, wow.
And that was really cool. But then they all went, well, that makes Wes look just slightly woofy. We shouldn't have that, I don't think. And so out of that came the feathers. And the feathers were brilliant. And that was by Miss Mercuria, who was our
wardrobe.
Doing our costuming. And God rest her soul, she's passed away, unfortunately. But she came up with all the feathers and put it on, and that was it. I mean, everybody, including me, when we looked at it, went, oh my God. And that made the character. And it's funny how just the costume and the makeup changes your perception of what you're doing. Even in Trouble Is My Business, because I had that costume and the hat and the gloves, I never took the gloves off. It became part of the character, which then added to who I was as a character in the film. And that type of thing I love, because it's all a process of building, like you're building something with those play blocks, you're building them up and putting them one on top of the other, and this one fits here, that one fits there, until in the finish you've built this character. And that's, to me, that's what it's all about.
We got a question here from Munchkin in the chat. Thank you so much, Munchkin, who says, hello, Vernon. Do you think Mad Max's Wes and Weird Science's Lord General are the same person, or at least connected? Think Biff and Griff from Back to the Future, too. What do you think of that?
It was actually a send-up of Wes.
There you go.
It was a parody, wasn't it? They asked you to come out do a parody.
Same character,
Yeah.
And knowing Vernon, he probably didn't want to do a parody of that. I'll bet you resisted doing that. Yeah.
Be involved.
Yeah, I know you. He's brilliant. He knows when to say no enough times. No, I don't want to do it. No.
Then Tony the Mighty just says, tipping my hat to a man whose characters have basically filled my childhood. Loved you as Ranzik, Mr. Wells. There you go.
Thank you. That was a fun 12 months of my life playing in the kids show. I really enjoyed it, and the character was wonderful. So I have been so lucky with what I do and the people I work with. I just, it's just one of those things.
Yeah. And Stephanie Janisek just sends a welcome to you, Mr. Wells, to the channel, and we also welcome you as well.
Stephanie, hello.
sends in a super chat, aka deleted scene, says, "Hell, Mr. Wells, Tom K, script, mods, and chat. The Road Warrior is why I fell in love with action films." Well, yeah, that's kind of what Tom was saying too in the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
Then Rob
absolutely.
Altus says, "Road Warrior is a masterpiece. Vernon and Mel Gibson were great with hardly any dialogue, and that's impressive." And yeah, that's something we were talking about just before the show started. We talked about how the movie was almost like a silent film in a way. Like, because there's really, you could watch it almost as a silent film. So tell us, Mr. Wells, was the script pretty well laid out, or was there a lot of improvisation at all, or was it all kind of built around the stunts? How did it all kind of come to be?
The thing with the dialogue was there's really no need for a lot of dialogue. I mean, 90% of that film is what the characters are doing, not what they're saying, because none of them actually get close enough to each other to say a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of show don't tell kind of stuff.
They're
and we brought that up
usually
too. Yeah.
hurling stuff at each other or driving things at each other, so you didn't get a lot of time to sort of sit around and chat with a cup of coffee or something. So, I mean, I think that was the whole point, is that the characters and the story had to hold itself up without the use of dialogue, and I think they did that amazingly well.
Yeah, and if I may jump in, when this was edited, it was edited without sound. One thing that George Miller, the director, likes to do is he works from drawings, from images. He will map out everything, and he wanted to make sure that the film actually worked without sound, that sound would just simply be that next layer of immersive quality. You know, the orchestral score by Brian May took it to the next level, the sound of the cars, but the entire editing process was with the sound off so he could focus on images without the sound distracting. And so that's not an ordinary part of the production process either, but that sort of bold approach of shooting the movie in sequence and then editing it with the sound off is why you have this visceral visual reaction to it. And something that George does incredibly well is when you're shooting an action scene, you want to know where people are. You want to feel the geography. When Vernon is on one other car and leaping to another, you want to know where they are in proximity to Mel's character driving the truck. So, and he gives you the geography, then he cuts in to the action and back out, and then he takes it in the other direction at the end of the film when he's riding the front of the oncoming truck. They actually have a couple of pop-in shots to sort of make the kinetics of it work, where the eyes bulge, which is a George Miller touch, and you feel the kinetics of the two coming together, but you know exactly where you are in the film at all times, and he does that brilliantly. And the cinematographer Dean Semler, he understood that visual language really well by putting in the center of frame most of the time the action, so that the eye can follow very quick cuts, because George Miller always thought that films are made out of those little tiny 15-second, 5-second pieces of film that lead up to a kinetic, almost emotional, explosive result. And that's one thing that this film did incredibly well.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement, Tom, that it was. I was up in Sydney for a couple of times with George while he was in the editing suite, watching what they were doing, and I was sitting back quietly mumbling dialogue because it wasn't coming up on the screen. But yeah, it's and the thing is too that it would make a great silent movie.
Yeah,
simply because all the components are there.
Yes,
and you
understand the relations.
You don't need the dialogue. A lot of films need the dialogue to progress the film, to push the film along, to get you from point A to point B. This one didn't need that. It was a standalone, by itself, production that went from start to finish with the action that was occurring around you, and it immersed the audience in this world, and you accepted it for what it was, which I think is what the amazing thing was that he achieved.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Were you good at riding a motorcycle when you started it?
Yeah, I'd been riding motorcycles for a long time. Grew up on a farm, chasing cows around the back paddock. I was a dumb shit in a motorbike. God love me.
So you were already comfortable on it.
Yeah, the problem
I
we
know.
had was, of course, is that it was a street bike that we were riding on the dirt, and street bikes don't go really well on the dirt. They tend to slide a lot. They're way too heavy, and it's just like, oh boy.
I'm sure you felt it. Yeah, you must have felt that. And we should give a shout out to all the stunt team on that literally risked their lives to do the film. There's
Amazing.
one end over shot. You know this shot where there's one end over where the guy runs into the side of a car and he's end over end going into boxes, and he broke both of his legs in that shot. And he's like, no, use it. You know, we got to do it. You know, we got to do it. Yeah, keep going. We got to go with this. But a real tribute to Australian talent there. I think they picked a perfect type of film to announce Australian film on the international stage because it didn't need dialogue. It became universal and primal, but also it showed the Australian aesthetic of, you know, these stunt guys would hang it out there and they're like, look, it's good for the shot. I'm going to do it. You know, let's actually crash the cars. Let's not rely on a lot of trickery. Let's try and do things in camera. And it makes it timeless. It holds up today because you're seeing guys actually hang it out there, right, Vernon? They were risking their lives in some cases.
Yep. I can only agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
I don't understand a word of it, but I can agree with it.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
You can agree with it. Yeah, you agree. You agree with it at least. Yeah.
Here's something that Mr. Wells may be able to comment on. Like this shot here specifically, I love bringing up because even though you're not the main bad guy, you're clearly his right-hand man and almost like metaphorically his bulldog in this scene because you're chained down. Like, I mean, just that part of the character just resonates so well. Like, even though, like, what does it feel like to be like known as like the ultimate kind of bad guy for Mad Max? I mean, that's kind of you kind of like you're the most memorable, I'd have to say, of all of his adversaries in the films. I mean, do people bring that up to you often?
That was what George's comment was, that I took a small part and turned it into a movie.
Right.
It was, I mean, I just, to me, Wes was the usurper. He didn't give a flying F about Humongous. He was going to take over Humongous's part and beat him into the ground as well. I mean, that was just the way the character was. He was totally, don't stand in my way because I'll walk all over you, which I loved about that character. He was a very brutal, in his own way, human being, but
very off the chain to
also
be
for a reason.
Yeah. Literally, he let loose the dog of war. Yeah.
Yes, dog of war. Be still my dog of war. Like, yeah, I'll rip your head off. You let me go.
It's a great reference, letting loose the dogs of war.
I kind of went from one film to the other, playing these like Commando and Weird Science, all these characters within this vein, and then I got a little, I think, jaded by it all. I wanted to just do something else. So
right,
you know,
sure,
people like Tom come along and they drag my ass into doing something else, and then it's like, oh damn it. I'm back beating people to death, and you know.
Yep.
Well, on that note, the Waltman sends in a super chat and says, "So is it wrong for me to know Vernon more as Ranzik from Power Rangers Time Force and Bennett from Commando than his role in Mad Max 2?" I don't think that's wrong, Waltman, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say, Mr. Wells.
As a very smart man once said, "Just so long as you know me, I don't care how, when, or why."
Right? There's, you know, that's as
true.
long as you're discovered. And then RRTNZ says, "Way to go, Minute's Edge, having an Aussie legend on. Cheers." Well, yes, and we got to thank Tom for that. He of course,
absolutely. He's a dear friend, and we have to say thank you for your time, Vernon. I know it's valuable, and I really appreciate that you came and talked about this and joined me. You've always been there for me, and I do appreciate that. And I think we see the love here in the comments that really, for me, kind of says, hey, we got to make some more movies. We have more to tell. We have more to do. Vernon and I are producing together. We've sort of joined forces on a number of films, and there's so much more to say. And we're so happy that people love his characters, and I want to honor those characters by creating some new things. And part of the beauty of looking back, you learn from these. It's garbage in, garbage out. If you put good stuff in, good stuff out. So looking at something like Road Warrior, I learned something every time, not only about how to tell a story visually, but how he uses archetypes. Like I know George was a big fan of Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell wrote a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces in script. You can probably speak to this as well. And he uses those mythic archetypes, those Freudian archetypes, to tell a story that's a combination of a Western and a samurai film and all these things. And we're all trying to get back to that original rush, that feeling of mythical characters, iconic characters, and the struggle of what it is to be human, what it is to be a hero, how you overcome adversity. And this film has stood the test of time because it is a primal legend. And script, if you want to tap into some of that, I think Joseph Campbell would be very proud of this film.
I would have to agree. I mean, one of the things that it does quite well is that it keeps the plot incredibly simple. It's basically like, we want gas. That's it. And everybody can understand why. Gas. And what really helps make that easy for the actors is that you have each individual character wants gas for whatever reason itself. Like Humongous wants gas to maintain his power. Wes wants gas because if he gets, he could probably usurp Humongous. And then anything else, he wants revenge because the little girl who's playing the boy kills his partner. And there's all that going on. It's like rage and beast, and Max himself, he just wants gas so he can go to the next town. And the entire community is like saying, well, we kind of tapped this place dry. We got to move somewhere else. So we need to protect the gas so we can move somewhere else to mine for more or what have you. Like, it's all really small, subtle things, but it's so easily communicated that it allows the characters to just really rise up and shine. And that's kind of what happens with archetypes, is that your archetype is what shines through and drives the plot.
Very true.
The plot dragging the characters through it, which ends up making it usually a boring story.
Yeah,
no,
that's very
here
true.
It drives it, and almost to be punny. And then Okie Native says, I always wanted to see Mr. Wells play Mark Brandon Reed, aka Chopper. I don't know if you're familiar with that character or not, but
I do.
Yeah, I think another Australian actor that won the Academy Award played that one.
Yeah, I was gonna
Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe. Rob Altus says the opening shot with. Oh, go ahead, sir.
The opening shot.
Okay,
with
the shot with the blower, and the interceptor gave the gear
Mel's car. Yeah,
gave this gearhead chills. He says, "Yeah, that's a great shot."
Yeah,
isn't that Vernon? Real quick, is that a Ford Falcon? That's what that is. It's a kitted out Ford Falcon, right? That car.
Yeah, that's they were Super Pursuit cars, Super Pursuit Falcons. They were the cop cars. Yep,
that's right. Yeah. Very unique looking car.
And then ActionCom says, hello, Mr. Wells. If I may tax your memory, prior to the film, what came to mind when you heard the word post-apocalyptic? George Miller did for that word what George Romero did for zombies. So prior to this movie, what kind of things came to your mind when you thought of post-apocalyptic?
Post-apocalyptic, it actually didn't bring anything to my mind. I grew up with my grandfather, who was very much into teaching me what our world would become if we weren't careful, and the things that we had to look out for, that no matter what we thought would possibly be the things that came to kick us in the butt eventually. So the post-apocalyptic thing to me was, it had more to do, for me, it had more to do with the period we were living in than the period we were going to live in. So I had the thing of that we were actually sharing a post-apocalyptic future as we lived, and that going forward into a post-apocalyptic future didn't seem like reality, because I always thought we'd have enough brains not to get there. So see how wrong I was.
I would have hoped so, but yeah.
Yeah, who would have thought it was toilet paper instead of gas everybody was killing everyone for, right?
Yeah.
Just walk away. Walk away from the toilet paper.
Step away from the Charmin. Yeah.
Don't squeeze the Charmin as you leave.
I see a parody.
I do that now whenever I go to the shop. I give them all a little extra squeeze. You know, oh yes, that's
Just
soft,
a little,
that's soft.
yeah.
I like that.
That's good. Yeah.
And then Rob
I love
Altus
it.
brings up a very great point here that, and that's one of the reasons why this movie was picked for this show, is this is a rare sequel that actually overshadows the original, not just by personal opinion, but in the U.S. especially. Most people didn't even know of the first Mad Max till, after this film had blew up, and especially the other sequel as well. So like, that's a rarity, is to like you just said yourself, you didn't want to revisit the character or do a parody of it anyway. Mm-hmm. So like, yeah, I can imagine just being a part of that. What does that feel like to be a part of something that's, so collectively loved?
I feel like, if I can jump in, I mean, it had a budget of, I think, Australian 4.5, I think, million was the budget. So it was Australian dollars 4.5 million. And it at the time, it was the most expensive sequel that Australia had produced, a film that had come out. And the reason it was released as The Road Warrior was because Mad Max 2 was not... okay. Mad Max 2 was not known, so they called it The Road Warrior in North America because moviegoers were not familiar with that first installment of Mad Max. So it's sort of like, what The Godfather 2 was to The Godfather. It was more ambitious, it had more scope, but it was also sort of playing in that universe and expanding that universe because they had a lot more toys and a lot more money. Even Australian 4.5 million was a lot of money in 1980.
And not only that, it lives on its own. Like, right, you don't really have to have seen the original. I mean, even though it does have the little kind of, it
recaps. In fact, the whole original is in the flashback in the beginning. Exactly. In that brilliant voiceover, it actually covers Mad Max pretty well. All the different shots, and they put it against the backdrop of some stock footage of riots and things like that gave it a sort of immediacy. But then it came out as The Road Warrior because people hadn't seen Mad Max, and being this very expensive by Australian dollars sequel, it could play with a much larger canvas and could be more ambitious, but at the same time very simple. And I think that's why it works.
Yeah, I think as George likes to say, that they were amateurs when they did the first one, and they'd learnt a lot by the time they did the second one. And it shows. I mean, there's a lot of difference in the way George did what he did. But the funny thing is, when I first got cast into Road Warrior, I had no clue what it was, what a Road Warrior was, what the film was, what a George Miller was, nothing. And my manager said, "Why don't you go see the movie?" And because I had never seen it, so I said, "Oh, okay." So I went and saw Mad Max, and it was on at the drive-in. The funny thing was, it was a double feature: Mad Max and Duel, Steven Spielberg's first movie. So I went and I watched them, and then the next morning my manager rang me and she said, "So what did you think?" And I said, "Duel was such a great movie." And she went, "Oh God." I had nothing to say about Mad Max, but Duel was really cool.
That was a good film, yeah.
That was my first coming into the whole thing. Yes, just total dumb shit. And there's a question there. What did Vernon think of the American redub? Hated it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Totally unnecessary.
I was going to ask that next. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe it messed up the whole film because, and it's funny, that was before Americans accepted that we actually spoke very similar to them.
Yeah, speak English.
And
yeah.
It was this whole thing that, you couldn't speak with another accent in America because the people way out in the boondocks would not accept it. And they were all proven to be wrong with Road Warrior, where our voices stayed the same and we did the film and everybody loved it. So I think it's a simplicity to me, is that if you do a good film that tells a good story, then people will watch it regardless. And I think the perfect example of that is an amazing Scottish actor that played the captain of a Russian submarine. Nobody cared.
Yeah.
You know, nobody cared. You weren't
He was an
listening to his
adversary.
accent, you were watching the movie.
Right.
That's right. He was a Russian with an adversary. Yes.
So
well,
aside
I think
from your,
I was just going to say there was a TV version that came out of Road Warrior where I think they had James Whitmore or someone redo the voiceover, and it completely ruined the flashback sequences and some of the other things because they got rid of the Australian dub. And it really informed me in that how important it is that the original voices that did, particularly if it's already in English, the original voices are so necessary to do the tone and everything that you need in a film. Every little piece of a film matters.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, I can't imagine it with any. I've never seen that version actually. I can't imagine it with any other voice.
Yeah,
bookending the film.
It's unnerving. Yeah, it was very unnerving. It aired on TV, and I was like, "What is this?" Yeah.
So then, I guess that kind of leads to my next question, Mr. Wells. So, outside of yourself, who is your favorite character in the film?
Apart from myself, who's my favorite character in the film? Which one, the original or Road Warrior?
Road Warrior.
My favorite character in Road Warrior, believe it or not, would have been Mel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I loved
Max.
Mel's portrayal of the character. I mean, he took it from where it was in the first one, and he turned it into this whole new direction, and I loved that. I thought that was exceptionally good from an actor's point of view. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, he really took that man with no name in quotations kind of character here and ran with it with a new twist, kind of spin, however you want to put it. Because like my exposure to the film was, I actually saw them in order, but I didn't get into them until a little later in life. Probably about 13, 14. I didn't get to grow up on them like some kids were lucky enough to. But I know I totally would have loved this film in particular as a kid.
Yeah.
This one and the third one would have really resonated with me more so. Because, like, you know, as an adult, I'm like, okay, yeah, I really respect the first film for what it tried to do, especially on the low budget. But it does still feel like a prequel to this film. Like, this film feels like the meat. This movie feels like what we've been waiting for. And every movie since then has tried to emulate this, up until even the, Fury Road, which, a lot of people enjoy. But I still seen a lot of shades of Road Warrior in that film. I'm like, yeah, it feels kind of like not a remake, but almost like a reskin. If that sounds
an echo of it?
Yeah, a shadow, an echo, a reskin. Yeah,
a reskin of it, and yeah.
There's a lot of films have tried to duplicate Road Warrior, but they've all failed because you have to look at the fact that George Miller was an artiste at what he did. I sat and watched George one day do one of the crash sequences and edited it for 4 hours, frame by frame by frame, and would take a frame out, put a frame. And I mean, that was the way he edited, for God's sake. And that's what made the difference, was those little things that he did. And most people, when they try to do a little Mad Maxy type thing, they don't worry about that. They just put the costumes on, they have the cars and the whole bit, and they think, well, we're kind of Mad Max-ish. And it doesn't work.
Yeah, there was tons of, you can call rip-offs or homages, whatever the hell you want to call them. What's his face over at New Horizons and stuff. Roger Corman made I don't know how many Mad Max rip-offs.
He tried to get it. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that's very true.
Good old Roger.
Yeah. Well, and I have to back up what Vernon said about Mel. Mel had a difficult role in that because at first he is a loner and he's got to have a charm, but he is not. He's the stranger who wanders into society. He is outside of society, and as an actor, he has to radiate charm, but at the same time seem bitter, withdrawn, remote. He connects with the child. I think his name is Emil Minty, correct, Vernon? Emil Minty was the child in that, I think. And
Feral Child, yeah.
Yeah, the Feral Child. And we see a moment where they have a musical little piece of a musical device, and he plays it and sort of tosses it back, and you see the child light up, and Mel just makes an acting choice of just a little wisp of a smile goes across his face, and then he brings it back in. And then he really has to eat crow as a character when he's like, look, I'm out of here, I've got my gas, I'm leaving. He leaves, but then Vernon's character stops him cold, kills his dog, destroys his car, and he's brought back, and he's woozy, and no one plays being hurt or crazy like Mel Gibson does. He does a great job of being,
like that perfect shot that explains what you're talking about is where he's on the plane or the helicopter on the gyrocopter or whatever, and he's bringing him in, and the bad guys are down there below him, and he's just like trying to like cover his face because it's almost like he's in that like that haze of like, am I in the middle of a fight right now? Do I need to protect myself? What's going on? Like he's totally out of it. He does it so well. You're right.
He does it brilliantly because he almost seems like he's concussed. He's got a concussion, but then he's kind of smiling and he's like, okay, am I flying to heaven or am I about to fight these guys? And you remember, there's a bunch of guys standing around with Twinkies and microphones filming you, and you have to make everything work in this one little slice of reality that is your acting and your energy that's in the frame. So everything that you're like, it's just Mel being Mel. No. You're creating close-up magic, and you're utterly believing that he's that character. Vernon does the same thing. You're like, oh, well, he's just this crazy wild Indian of a man. It's like, no, Vernon had to turn it on, and he had to do it. You're seeing the take they used, not the 40 takes they didn't use. And so that's where the acting and the real craft comes in, is every time throwing down. And that's why, Mel did an incredible job with this film, is that he had his full charisma. It's a very difficult character to start playing, and by the end, we love him because of the sacrifice that he makes in being the decoy. And that hook in the story really takes it to the next level, because it's like, oh, God, he did all that sacrifice, and it was to be the decoy. He didn't even do it to get the gas. And so I think that all the actors in this committed in a way that you believe the sort of cowboys and Indians dynamic between them, because everybody had a character, everyone had a backstory, and everything in this film was moving inexorably to how do we take what's left of society and get it out of this, horrible area in Broken Hill. And Broken Hill is what, in the middle of nowhere, right, Vernon? It's like out of Sydney. It's hundreds of miles outside of Sydney. It was in the middle of nowhere. And you had to create out of that. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. I can imagine that definitely helps you get into the character for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
If you look at the character of Wes too, is George made him very much like a samurai.
Mm-hmm.
He was like the samurai figure. He even tilted my eyebrows just very slightly up and pinned my eyes just very slightly to give that look, because to him it was very much that samurai versus samurai, the good samurai and the bad samurai, the fight to the finish. It was done in that perspective, and I loved it. That was George's little thing.
Yeah, that was the genius of it, is the samurai, which of course, George Lucas appropriated for Jedi, and certainly Magnificent Seven was inspired by Seven Samurai. So the samurai code used for good or evil was something that you wanted to tap into in Road Warrior. There was a simplicity to it, that the samurai can exist outside of society, but he becomes a catalyst for society, and he can change their situation. And he isn't necessarily buying into them. He's not going to stay. In fact, I love that, we never saw him again as we're panning away, because once he does that catalytic thing, he does what's necessary to do, the samurai must move on. He's a Ronin. He has to keep moving and changing, and he can never rejoin society. And that is such an iconic thing. It's a Western thing, but it's also an Eastern thing. And so I love that they were able to just tap into that in a deep vein in something like Road Warrior, and it holds up.
Yeah, and I don't know how much longer we have Mr. Wells for, but if you can hear me, we have a question for him here. Tony the Mighty wants to know if you were asked, would you reprise the role of Ranzik on Power Rangers?
The funny thing is, they did a show a couple of years ago, which they had all the villains in the show, like the different villains from the different seasons.
Right.
And I sort of didn't get asked to do it. And I was talking to Koichi, who was one of the producers and directors. And I said, "Oh, great, Koichi, you don't invite me to come along and do the episode, this major episode with villains." And he went, "But you're not a villain anymore. You ended up being the good guy."
Yeah, you were cured at the end of that, weren't you?
Yes. And I'm like, son of a yeah.
Oh, bummer. There goes a paycheck,
So,
right?
yeah, so they didn't ask me to come.
There goes
because
the
I wasn't
paycheck,
doing it. So playing Ranzik, I would never be able to play him as a villain again.
Yeah, that's true.
But he
Well,
could
there
be
you
a
go.
mentor for new Rangers.
Are you
That's
listening,
right.
guys?
That's right. Hire this man. Something I wanted to say about the editing, if I may, and then just turn it over to you guys. But
Please.
Vernon was saying he was sitting in the edit room, and something that's interesting about that end sequence. There's overall about 15 shots per minute, with an average shot length of about, I'd say, 4 seconds. And so when you see that end scene, where he's driving the truck and Vernon's turning it back around and coming at them, there's 85 cuts. And I think each cut, I've slowed the film down and looked at it on my edit system. Some of those cuts are 2.5 seconds long. And what he does is your eye has just enough time to comprehend what you're seeing, but it's the aggregate thing of all the small cuts that lead up to the kinetic, quality of that film.
Basically cut like a Michael Bay film 20 years before Michael Bay.
Prior to Michael Bay. And actually better because you never lose the geography. You never lose a sense of where you are. It's not just random cuts to different things, but you're actually cutting, building to an explosive emotion. And the fact that you have, a film that averages 15 shots per minute, he's shot on film too. This is before nonlinear editing.
Right,
so you're
right.
dealing with pieces of negative where you're scratching the negative for 2 seconds. So you've got little pieces of film that you're putting together. So that really is why it's such a jarring and suspenseful film, is that he really built it in the edit. It was built in post. And the actors threw down these great performances, but then he knew how to make it explosive and have an energy to it that's just unbelievable.
It is kind of almost like a character in the film itself, because it wasn't the way films were shot before that, at least not extensively cut like that. You're right. Like, looking back,
You just
on
didn't
now,
see a
especially
film
considering-
cut like that.
Yeah, especially watching
Yeah.
it just before the show. Like, they did a great job with the picture, remastering it over at Warner Brothers for the new 4K, but it still wears a bit of its grime, right? Like, it is almost like a character. The film itself, the way it looks, the way it feels, and it's not totally pristine and perfect, but that's also kind of part of it, right? Like, it is almost perfect in its execution of chaoticness, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. It is perfect chaos. It's orchestrated chaos. And if you slow down and look at some of the scenes, there are tricks that they're using to speed up a shot, slow down a shot, to get the can of nitrous gas, and you want to feel like you're kinetic and out of control. Absolutely. Every trick in the book, a lot of them in camera, and Vernon was certainly part of a lot of those shots where you were using trickery and playing with time in order to get an emotional impact, because at the end of the day, we remember how we felt watching the film, and we remember how the world was sort of built, and you feel like you were there. You feel like you were part of the kinetics of the chase. It never stepped back from the chase, except maybe to give you a breath, and then it put its hands around your neck again and started to throttle you. And that's what's beautiful about the film, is that he knew pacing.
We had movies like Bullet and French Connection, which had great chase sequences in them, but I don't think they ever felt like this. You're right. Probably the closest would be French Connection with the car chase scene, but even that,
which was brilliant.
It wasn't as kinetic as this. I think that's the best word for it. Like, this movie just moves. There's no moment.
Yeah,
really.
This movie is the chase scene. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. And from a writing standpoint, it's visual writing. It's almost as if there was a film score, there was an audio score, and then there was a visual score, and that was the script. And I think that's it does feel that way. And how lucky Vernon was to be there at the inception of it, but also to kind of see how it's come together and the long-term resonance that it's had for the rest of his life, that a film like this is so universally loved and such a brilliant example of visual storytelling.
Yeah, added in with just the stunt work, the costumes, the casting, of course, as in respect to Mr. Wells here. And Okie Native says, Space Truckers, Fortress with Christopher Lambert. I still remember Mr. Igo from Inner Space the most. So there you go.
That's so nice.
Yeah, great list of work there. Rico Zorro says, cheers everyone in Vernon. Did you guys race the gang vehicles? And if so, you win? If no, what was it like with all those drivers' cars open road? So did you guys play with the vehicles in between shots, or you just not have time for stuff like that?
No, George made it very clear that anyone that was caught doing dumb stuff like that would be thrown off the set. He'd already in Mad Max 1, the lead lady had got badly hurt before they started filming, and he had decided that was not going to happen. So we weren't allowed to go out and skylark.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I know we've kept you here a little bit longer than we originally anticipated, but before we let you go, was there any memories of the film that you wanted to share that you haven't got a chance to yet?
The only memory of the film that I've got that you should know is that Mel Gibson gave me a nickname called Barometer Bum, because every time the cheeks of my butt went purple, they would put us in somewhere where it was warm so we would get warm. So that's kind of the whole thing that I remember of the shoot.
Because you were stuck in those chaps all that time. Oh, boy.
We'll have to do that in our next shoot.
I have two questions about your costume, Mr. Wells, something that we haven't addressed yet. But the first one being is, where do you think Wes got the white battle makeup that he wore when he was taking out Max and going after the convoy? Because it's like, is it paint? Is it... where do you think Wes got that?
We were actually talking about this, and as George said, Wes was a survivor. That would all be very simple for him because there are plenty of rocks and stuff around where you can get the crush and get that nice white paint with a little bit of water to put across your face. And he said, that's where, because I asked him about that. I said, I carry a paintbrush and paint in my pocket, which I don't have. But no, he and it all became logical. Of course, there would be stones and things. The Aboriginals did it all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And then my second one was, how was it working with a crossbow on your wrist? Like as an actor, figuring out that prop and having practice with that. Could you enlighten us a little bit on that process and experience?
It was hysterical because I went through the camera crew 3 times, because every time I'd be coming towards the camera crew in a shot and trying to slow down, the stupid bloody crossbow would jam between the throttle and the brake handle, and I'd be like, I think everybody should get out of the way about now, because I'd be coming straight through. It was a total pain in the...
Yeah.
But it actually worked. I mean, they wouldn't let me put an arrow in it at any time that there was people around me, because it actually worked and it had a lot of force in it.
Right. Wow.
It was a working prop. Yeah. Well, I will say, as dangerous as the film seems, there was, George Miller and the whole team, his producers, made sure that it was a safe set as much as it could be. And safety on the set was always important. And as wild as things look like on camera, you really have to have even more discipline to be dealing with firearms, to be dealing with vehicles and things. There is a discipline and a rigor that you have to have. These are professionals.
Exactly. One of the things I noticed is that there's no wide shot with other people in the shot for when a bow is being fired or a certain weapon is being discharged. It's all kind of focused in on that apart like it's isolated. But with the clever spatial geography that George Miller shot, you kind of get like, oh yeah, he's right next to this other guy before he's shooting him off or whatever. It's like,
Great point, script.
On the motorcycles, I think when someone's like in the sidecar, like, you know, they have the guy driving the motorcycle, but the guy in the sidecar has the crossbow, so it's like, okay, that makes sense. But even then, he just aims it, and you don't really see in the shot him squeezing the trigger and the projectile leaving. It cuts to the reaction where the arrow goes into the armor or something, and you know, it's all clever stuff to sort of trick your mind into things happening when they actually aren't. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
Oh yeah, he was good, and he made sure that we were safe.
Yep.
That's so important on any set. You have to have safety. When we did Trouble, we did safety checks every time. If there was a gun, if we were doing any kind of thing like that, you have. And doing an action film like this, they had to be very rigorous about it. And though people did get hurt, stunt people did get hurt doing it, every measure was taken to be safe on the set. You know, that's just a given, especially like a George Miller set. When he did Fury Road, he was the same way.
Right. Yep. And given that this was, you know, that many years ago, you know, that says a lot. So,
and then that's absolutely the fire that was used in this film, like real fire, like no digital
real fire. Yeah.
Real explosions, real car crashes.
Explosion that went off of the compound was amazing. Were you there for that, Vernon, when he set the place off and it exploded? Did you feel it?
On that hill, with all the vehicles watching that when it went off. It was
getting marshmallows ready.
How many cameras did he cover it with? Do you remember how many cameras he had rolling? Did he have multiple cameras?
He had cameras in the front of 2 of the vehicles. He had cameras overhead. Probably about 4 or 5 cameras.
Yeah. Was that typical? Did he like to run an A camera and a B camera at all times to catch things, or did he sometimes just have one?
Mostly he only had the A camera.
Okay. So he would catch everything with the A and occasionally get the B. And then did he oversee the second unit?
Because we did have the helicopter at all times because it was Brian's helicopter. So
Right.
We had the helicopter at all times that we wanted to do helicopter shots. But nice. George is very, very lenient on what he uses and how he gets it because he knows exactly what he wants. So he doesn't need to put 5 cameras on to get it. You know, he's very careful.
Right.
But the thing about that explosion, it went off so well that all the pieces of corrugated iron, tended to go up and then start to float like big wings. And floated on the breeze, and they were being found 2 and 3 miles away from where we were. They'd come down.
Wow!
These large pieces of corrugated iron. So it was kind of interesting.
I would imagine. Yeah, I mean that is one of the biggest explosions I had seen on film. I'm sure you could feel it, and the heat and everything generated by it was pretty impressive. Yeah.
Well, the funny thing about that was when they were cleaning up, they just dug a hole and put everything in it. So that
I wish we could do that now. Yeah,
that whole compound and everything and vehicles, you name it, all went into this like a mass grave for the pieces and bits from Mad Max. And an English guy went up to Broken Hill and started a Mad Max museum, and he went out with a metal finder and found all of those places and dug everything up and brought it back and refurbished it and put it in his museum.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yep.
That is amazing.
To buy anything. He had it all there in the ground. So, and I ended up with my costume. So I do have the Wes costume.
Oh, you do have it. You still have it.
Wow, that's cool.
Oh, yes, you could reprise the role again if you wanted.
Yeah, whenever I'm peeved at the world, I just go in and look at that costume and go, oh my God, I have suffered worse.
And you can always put it on to get toilet paper if you need it too. You can always do that.
It actually fits me.
Oh, cool.
It's scary.
I believe it. Yeah, you're still in really good shape. You're in very good shape.
You,
yeah, I
it's
think
fun. Guys,
fantastic.
because they're doing the house now and they need me to go around it, I'm going to have to say goodbye.
No, that's fine. We got plenty of time with you, a lot more than we had planned on, and we're very thankful that you were able to join us today. It was a great Christmas treat. So thank you so much.
I was just going to say that I'd like to wish everybody that's been watching the show and everybody that rang in on the show a wonderful Christmas. Happy holidays. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas with your families. And please, the one thing I wish for everybody is that we all stay safe and we just continue on.
Thank you so much, sir.
You know, safe and Merry Christmas. And I'll be with the Wolves at Christmas time, Tom.
Oh, you will. That's terrific.
To be with the Wolves.
Oh, that's fantastic. You should just mention for a moment about the thing that you're doing for the Wolves. I think that would be very helpful.
I'm involved with Wolf and Wolf Dog Rescue, and we have 16 up in the high desert that we go up and see occasionally. They use them for educational purposes and also for teaching purposes for kids and for people that have probably like people that come back from the war with PTSD. They work with them because wolves are very, very smart and intelligent animals, and they know exactly what's wrong with you and how to treat you, and it just makes people understand that their life isn't as bad as they think, and it kind of brings them back to reality, which is really, really cool. But that's basically, you know, that's my pet project. I love it. That and building schools for kids in foreign countries where they don't have schools. That's my other one.
That's terrific.
But
is there a place people can donate?
I pester
is there a donation?
Tom to get our movie
done. We got to get Island in the Stars made. We're going to do that next year. We're moving very close to doing it, and Vernon's going to be the star.
The next time we come and talk to these guys, it'll be for the premiere of Island in the Sky.
Can't wait. Cannot.
Yeah, exactly. All Thank you so much, my friend.
Now calling me.
Take
I gotta
care,
go.
Merry
I've got to go check everything.
Love to you and the family.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Tom. Been wonderful.
Okay.
Love you all, and to everybody that tuned in. God bless. Love you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for my career. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.
All right. So thankful to have Mr. Wells with us. That was a great surprise for Merry Christmas for us. Hopefully you guys out there enjoyed that. We're all caught up on the Super Chats, thankfully. But was there anything else we wanted to discuss about the film real quick before we wrap this up? Was there any more points that you wanted to... You've been very quiet, Script, this whole time. I'm sure there's a few things you might have to say. How can you not want to just
listen to Vernon
I know,
Wells
right?
Talk, right? Yeah, no, I mean, he hit a bunch of the stuff there. He answered the questions that I always had. They're like, yeah, like, me and my friends when we were kids watched this, like, okay, so where's he getting the white makeup from? And like, did he find a seagull somewhere and then just like squeeze it out of that, or is it, all the weird stuff? But I love the answer, like, grinding of the rocks and the salt powder and all that stuff to do the war paint and whatnot. It's I like the fact that they explored those things at that point, because sometimes you get those types of things in independent film that you don't get in studio films. They say, hey, we got it this way. Who cares? Just go out there and do your shot. But
that's true. They were making a movie that, they cared about. They cared about the film. You're absolutely right, Script.
Yeah, and this movie is like one of the reasons this show exists. Like when we talked about Script and I talked about this was one of the movies that first came to mind when we're like, well, that's definitely an A-rated B movie, right? Like that's kind of the definition of it right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like
it's a perfect B movie. You're right, Tom. It really is. It's a quality film done on a lean budget. That's a little scrappy film that never would have been made by a studio.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're wondering what happened to the dog in the film, there was Dog. He was adopted from the pound, and I was talking to Vernon about this before, and he was about to be put to sleep. And he was terrified by the engines, and he would always lose control of his bladder whenever he was inside Max's car. He would be on it, and he was terrified. But at the end of the shoot, one of the stuntmen adopted Dog, and Dog had a happy ending starring in that film. And in fact, no animals were harmed in that film at all, even the rabbit. But yeah, dog ended up finding a home out of this thing, and he was terrified of cars, so he would pee in every take.
What's funny is my dad has a dog that looks just like Dog. Only now Dog
really?
is old and fat, but yes. Same kind of markings and everything, same kind of breed. I mean, it was a mutt, but like whatever the originating breed that Dog was, it looked exactly like it. And like I said, he's old and fat now, but when he was younger, he was a spitting image.
Yeah, that's a great breed of dog. I hear they're really scrappy, and I know two people I know have adopted dogs like that, and they're great dogs.
Oh yeah, he was fun. He's a fun one.
Yeah,
like I said, now he kind of just lays around and looks happy when you come in the door because he's old and fat. But yeah,
a good life.
All he does now is beg to go out and beg for treats, and that's about it. So no, but I love this film, and beyond just obviously the Wes character and Humongous and all that. I noticed, like, this time around, a few of the other kind of side characters that I never really paid much attention to before, and a few other things. And the presentation this time around, of course, was unlike I'd ever seeing it in 4K. But it's really cool. Like all the characters that are there, they feel very like of the world, and just to seeing how much of this movie's been ripped off, and
yeah.
I think that's kind of what makes it the best of these kind of movies, right? On top of all that.
You're right, Tom. Yeah, you look at certain films and they really hit deep when other films look like them, they resonate with them. We've got films that that's like Blade Runner, or look how Road Warrior influenced this look. It's one of those films that you kind of assume it's like, well, yeah, it's a post-apocalyptic and it's got these gangs and stuff like that, but no film had that before this. It was genre defining. Yeah, not like this at all. Like a Western kind of samurai with these apocalyptic things. This was a very different way of showing.
It's very punk rock in a lot of ways, like a filmmaking of.
Yes, it is a very
so different. Rock. And thank you, James McVan. That's what I thought. Yeah, my dad. Now you say that, my dad told me he was a Blue Healer. Yep,
absolutely. And I have to mention the score, the music score.
The score is great.
I listen to the score driving, and I speed every time I listen to it because it is such a great soundtrack. I'm glad they didn't go for kind of the rock or even a punk rock style score, because I think it would have made it of its time, or it would have dated it.
True.
This score, there's a scene that still gives me goosebumps, which is when he has the tanks and he has them on a kind of a piece of wood, and he's hanging them, and he walks up the hill, and the music crescendos with the sun kind of going down. It is one of the most just beautiful marriage of image and soundtrack. And every time I hear that track, the hair on the back of my neck stands up. It's such a great piece of music.
That's a great point. And the movie is very timeless. That's true. But I didn't even think about that too much until you just brought it up. Because like even the first Mad Max feels very 70s, right? Like it definitely wears its age. This film though, between the score and the fact that they didn't make any of the bad guys look too 80s punkish, right? Like they could have gone way too into that, and that would have definitely dated the film. Like there's a very I don't want to say generic, but a very timeless feeling to all the costumes.
Timeless, iconic. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not really set of any time. They're very conglomerated and put together by
they're scrappy. I mean,
scrappy, exactly.
Scrappy and salvage to try and see I
and that's the perfect thing.
I recognize lacrosse and football pads and all that stuff. I can see that surviving.
Especially with Vernon's character, that's a great example because you got the football pads, you got the S&M leather and all that kind of stuff, the chaps.
Exactly.
The whole
but it feels like an Indian, like American Indian or primitive. Like you would think of someone that was a native in the land, and it made it more timeless because he didn't look like he just walked off of a fashion thing for punk rock. It looked like they were found objects. It looked like he put that costume together as part of his life.
Yeah, and then you had the good guys counterparted with similar costumes, but all white usually, or lighter colors, or earth colors, as opposed to the bad guys who were generally in dark and more
Yeah, you're right.
and leather and studded and all that kind of stuff. And you even have the one guy that stuck out to me this time was like, oh, that's kind of like the antithesis of what Max was, because he's wearing the whole cop uniform like Max wore in the first film, only he's one of the bad guys and he has the studs all over his face and he's just kind of like that, just that like, kind of
it's like a bad
demented version of him. Yeah.
Yeah, or you feel like he took it off a cop he killed, you know?
Exactly,
and
exactly.
That, yeah. I think you're absolutely right. They used they played against it, and we didn't mention really the Papagallo character who is the leader inside the town is much more of a Lawrence of Arabia thing. You believe that he would live out in the cold desert with he's wrapped and has layers, but they dressed him white, that he was pure and that he was still representative of compassion and humanity. And
he's a very real character.
Yeah, he is. He has vulnerability, but he's also strong, and he gives Max an opportunity. And he was a great actor. And I love the little grace notes of the old general where he's like, hey, I love your gyro here, and maybe does it take two?
It's like it's time for me to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
He's a
I'm gonna negotiate. Yeah, and Virginia Hay, who that was her first acting part. She was the warrior woman who she undoes the handcuffs that Max has, and you would think, oh, okay, there's going to be a romantic interest, but all he goes is, yeah, thanks, and then he never talks to her again, never has anything to do with her, and she has this great part at the end where she sacrifices herself fighting on board the thing. But that was her first part, and she became friends with Vernon, and I've met her and worked with her on some stuff too, and she ended up on Farscape, and she's a sweetheart as well. So everybody had these great characters in the film that you cared about. You cared about the gyro captain.
Guy is someone we didn't talk about.
He's
probably one of my second or third favorite characters behind, Max and Vernon. He is just so well done, and he's just that character, right? Like he's the like script was bringing.
He's
up
the Joker and the kind of He's
kind of like the cabbie from Escape from New York. I love that kind of characters. They're always done very well,
and he gets what he's been fantasizing the entire since we meet him. He's like, remember clean women? I want to see a clean woman. Like, and then I want to see pure, clean, lovely girl that likes him. Yeah.
I love the stuff he talks about where he's like, lingerie. You remember lingerie? I was playing mahjong with the snakes, and
he dog food you're
eating. So again, it's just this character who's so memorable, but he has a heart of gold. He ends up being part of the reason that they survive. He could have been selfish and just taken off.
Well, I think Max is a big part of that. I think Max is like, because once he meets Max, and of course at first he hates him, but like, as he sees the kind of person Max is, he's kind of in that, like, I'm out for myself. But then he kind of sees how noble Max is being, and I think that kind of influences him a little bit. Like, because there even is that scene where, like, you're talking, where like he's talking to the girl and they're trying to sneak off, and then she changes her mind, and then he has a change of heart too. He doesn't leave either. He sticks around instead of just taking off. So, like, he continues to go through that.
He could have just left. Yeah,
and I mean. I even kind of took that as like he was the same kind of character in the second film, even though I think it's meant to be a different character. Yeah, the one that he played.
It is meant to be a different character. It got confusing. Yeah.
But like, it's still kind of like that idea that that's kind of where he would have wound up anyway.
Yeah,
so
that's
I don't
true.
care. In my head canon, it's the same two characters. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. In your headcanon, it's fine. And I think he was as clever as Max, because you remember Max has a bomb underneath there, and he's like, a quick fella might have a weapon down there. I'd have to pin his head to that panel, and so he's
similar with
no
the
dummy
snake too.
And I think Bruce Spence, who played that character, Bruce ended up having this incredible career. He was in Star Wars, Matrix. I mean, all these movies.
Didn't he wind up in one of the Crocodile Dundees too, or something like that? I think?
Yeah, he did. He did. He's a great character actor.
He was also in Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that's the other one I couldn't remember.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, I mean, all he needs is Lord of the Rings, and he would have had every single great franchise had Bruce.
That had anything.
Was he in Lord of the Rings? Okay, well, there you go.
He was the Black Lieutenant in Lord of the Rings.
Well, there you go. Then he's yes.
Okay. Lord of the Rings, Matrix, Star Wars, Road Warrior. He's done. He's laughing. He's done them all. Yeah. what a great bunch of characters, led by George Miller, and I'm just honored to be working with Vernon, and I met him by random chance, but I'm so glad that I did.
Well, that's the beauty of Vernon, and I brought it up a little bit earlier, is like, even though he is kind of the bulldog character, he's much more than, like, say, like, in Die Hard, you have the Die Hard character, the character
Right.
that MacLeod always has to go up against that never seems to die. That's kind of what
Right.
Vernon's
Yeah.
character is, but it's more than that in this film, right? He's not just
Yes.
there to look bad. I mean, he's driving most of this movie. He's part of the reason that this whole thing is set into motion, right? Like, his
Yes, he's the
character's,
primal force. Yeah.
and
yeah.
not only that, we
yeah.
didn't even get into the fact of his love interest in the movie and how progressive that kind of is. They don't really say it, but it's pretty clear that's his
It's pretty clear.
significant
He
other.
was pretty pissed. He was pretty pissed when they got a boomerang in the head. Yeah,
he was not happy
yeah.
at all. I mean, and that
Yeah,
was
he
more
was
than
not
just a
happy.
friendship kind of thing.
Yeah, and again, that's an interesting kind of prison mentality thing too, maybe. But I think it flavored his character that he cared about it, and it
Yeah.
made him vulnerable. And then once that character, of course, got killed, it gave him even more of a personal hatred, for the child and for the people inside there, because he blamed them for that. So it was part of the escalation of his character. If he had just been a loner to begin with, he wouldn't have had a pressure point or a vulnerability. So I think that's super important.
That speaks to where George Miller, like, really was ahead of his time, as far as, like, we talk about this stuff all the time with, like, Star Trek and stuff like that, right? Like,
Yes.
he just played that character in there, didn't make a big deal out of it. It's just there. It's not like,
there.
oh, by the way, this is my husband and he killed him. They didn't have all
Yeah.
that moment or anything like that. And, like,
their honeymoon or how they
exactly.
met.
And you're right. Like,
Yeah.
it probably was more of a necessity thing because, like, the
Yes.
gyro captain points out, there's not a lot of women around, probably. Like,
There's not a women around here. Yeah. Yeah.
And you look at
Exactly.
the gang, it's not very female heavy. So chances
Yeah.
are that kind of a thing would become normal. So, like, that's
Yes.
the way George treated it. And that's what we keep saying is, like, if you treat it like normal, nobody's going to care. It's when you sit here and you
Exactly.
bring it out and you virtue sing and you make this big whole thing about it, or you have a scene like in Star Trek where the one character stops everybody and goes, oh, by the way, I would prefer if you called me by my pronouns. Like, you didn't have that moment in the movie where, well, like, Wes was like, by the way, my pronouns are he, him,
Yeah, exactly. You have to respect me. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with you. The more offhand things are, the more they reflect real life, because in real life, nobody cares.
Yeah, like Putin said here, there wasn't 10 minutes of crying and everyone saying who they're screwing. You got all that from just a few minutes of character, and it didn't disrupt the movie. It was just part of the story. Like, I mean, I never even thought about it.
It was a
until
vulnerability.
probably-
It made him human. Yeah. Yeah.
It was one of those things that was
Made
so
him-
normal in movies at that point when I first saw the movie. I didn't think nothing of it at the time I saw it. And that's the kind of things we don't even talk about until now because of this shit. Because it's like, this has never been a problem before. But moving beyond that, though, no, like, the movie was just well crafted. I'm surprised that it's, still considered one of those films in the day and age we are in now where, these kind of movies we get every week with $200 million budgets and stuff like that, where, this little scrappy movie was made for next to nothing and it still holds up. I think that's the main thing that makes it an A-rated B movie more than anything.
Yeah, I agree. And the techniques that were used in this film carry on into A pictures to this day. And so the real legacy of this is that guys like us can sit around and talk about how much we love this movie all these years later, and the next generation of people that our audiences will discover it too, and it's a great B movie, and people that are making A movies are influenced by this little B movie, this little scrappy movie. So that's kind of a thing of beauty. It's like it's a beautiful little thing in the kind of wasteland that is the entertainment, business in general. You have this little gem that you can point to and go, that is just pure visual storytelling.
Yeah, it's definitely like I like the punk rock analogy I used earlier, because that's what this movie feels like. Because it doesn't feel like it's got a big fuck you to the whole idea of the studio mentality of how to make movies. It's like, we're not using any sets, we're not fucking around here. And
Yep.
even watching these stunts, you get like the jitters because
Yeah.
you know what they're really
They're
doing
hanging it out there. Yeah, that guy's really flying through the air. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like they had ambulances standing by when they crashed the 18-wheeler. I don't know if you guys knew this, but there was a very real chance that guy would be knocked unconscious and have to go to the hospital. So they basically had an ambulance and a helicopter just out of the shot. When that thing crashed and went over, they went over to see if the guy was still alive.
And a lot of these guys, the beauty of it is they're nuts enough that they're like, you just make sure you get it on camera. I don't
get
care.
it on camera,
just make sure you get it.
Yeah, did you get that? Did you get that? Yeah, it's like
you better have got that.
You better have got that, or I'll do it again. You know. So
as he's being hauled away from a stretcher.
Exactly, all the way on a stretcher. Is like, I got one more in me. You know, and that I actually once edited a reel for the actor who in T2, you know how Schwarzenegger's the Terminator character jumps on the side of a rig, you know, an 18-wheeler rig, and he grabs the guy and throws him out onto the concrete.
Yeah.
So he did that without a helmet, and I did his reel, and he told me some great stories. He said the first time I went down, it was a great shot, but you know, the camera was like, I didn't quite get it with the way. The third time he did it, that's the time that they used, but that time it knocked him right unconscious. He had no helmet. He had to do that fall 3 times. And by the third time it knocked him right out, and that's the one that's in the film. But those guys that hang it out there like that, they deserve a tip of the hat from us, because to make a great film. Yeah.
That's the Oscar that does not exist, that should exist. And is a travesty that it does not exist. And they should do, not only should they add it to the as a category, they should retroactively give one every year too. Like they should give a modern stunt.
There should be a lifetime achievement. Yeah.
And they should either give a lifetime achievement or go back and recognize at least one movie. And Road Warrior would be one of those movies that should be recognized for that. Like the sacrifice and the amount of risk and everything else that went into that kind of movie. And just a lot of movies that, I mean, I get it. A lot of these kind of stunts aren't done nowadays, and that's another reason why they use the excuse not to do it as an Oscar. But I say bullshit. That is one of the few Oscars that does not exist that should exist.
Well,
and
I agree with you.
Like,
go ahead, Script.
I think the Union has a stunt award every year, right, for best stunt.
Sure,
probably, but
but that's sort of a back room.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be front and center, because part of world building and part of, you know, what we all enjoy and look at is often the work of the stunt people and the whole stunt team, and that is an art unto itself. I mean, look at The Raid. You know, a show like that wouldn't exist. You know, a movie like that wouldn't exist without that incredible stunt team, or Mission Impossible, or all these different ones. So I agree, they are the unsung heroes. Someone just said that. Most of the time they're the unsung performers, and they're hanging it out there with their life and with their health.
There was a time when movies like this were built around that idea, and that's why I asked Vernon that question, was how much of this was kind of completely planned out, the script wise, whatnot. Was it planned around the stunts? Because a lot of times, you know, that's kind of what you would do, is like, you know, when you blow up a building or you have a big stunt, you know, thing like on a highway or whatever, like they take advantage of certain things. It's like, okay, we got from this date and this date to shoot on this highway because they're shut down doing construction. What can, you know, like they'll do stuff like that. I mean, now, of course, bigger movies, they can just shut things down. But when you're working on a thing like that, you know, I've known movies where they took advantage of, they're blowing up this building, well, let's get it. You know, like there's that kind of mentality too. But like they just don't do a lot of that kind of stuff anymore like they used to. But it's just
there's still some practical, but you're absolutely right. There's a lot more, and you know, fortunately for their health, there's a lot more things that you can do. But still, you know, every Marvel movie, every movie that we enjoy that has a lot of stunt work in it, there's guys hanging it out there doing it. There's a guy, I just did a fight scene thing and set in a tire place with this guy Gary Choi and his team, and those guys just hung it out there until 1 a.m. Risking life and limb to make the shots, and they really understand filmmaking. And so you're right, they deserve as much. They're supposed to be invisible because we want to believe in the character, but after the fact, they definitely should get some recognition.
You know what? Somebody, if you know Tom Cruise, let him know that chances are he'll win it every other year.
Yeah, that guy's crazy. He really, I mean, he's a terrific stuntman. I got to admit, everyone I talk to in the business goes, you know what? Think what you want about that guy. He's an incredible
Every year a
stuntman.
Mission Impossible movie comes out, you know that Tom's going to win the stunt award. It's a given.
He's going to win the stunt award. Yeah. Yeah, because the guy's crazy.
Got two.
Yeah.
There's an incentive to get it done.
Oh, that stunt where he hangs on the side of that plane and takes
or when
off.
he broke his ankle or whatever, jumping from the fucking building to the. I mean, Jesus Christ! Like all this shit he's done.
Hanging off the helicopter.
Yes, hanging off that helicopter and then dropping down into the bag below it. The director, Christopher McQuarrie, said that his heart leapt into his throat because he was like, "What is he doing?" And like some of it wasn't scripted.
We're about to kill Tom Cruise.
Yeah, and it's like, "Oh my God!" But he hung it out there. And for Tom, it's the integrity of the character.
I would not be able to direct one of those because I'd be under the fear the whole time. I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to go down as the director who fucking killed Tom Cruise.
Who killed Tom Cruise. Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's crazy. Yeah, that stuff by
What's funny is Tom does all this shit and he's going to die in some stupid fucking way, like tripping over his cat at his house or something.
Yeah, he'll be like 80 years old. 80 years old and fall over a cat. You're right. You know?
Yeah. Before he did
at the end of the day,
skydiving that stunt out like without a parachute.
That's right. He dies in a ventriloquist accident. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah.
That sounds like something from Spinal Tap.
Yeah, gets a splinter and then the infection.
Horrible. Yeah, we had a splinter from a ventriloquist dummy.
Strange ventriloquist accident.
A horrible ventriloquist accident. It was absolutely horrible.
Dummies.
Yeah, they located his hand up another puppet. It was horrible. Yeah, yeah. I had a blast, guys. I love this movie. I'm so grateful you brought me on here because this movie led me to doing Trouble Is My Business with Vernon, and I love talking about it. I learned so much from George Miller, and I love talking with both of you, Script and Tom, because you at the end of the day we love movies and stories, and this was a great talk.
Well, like I said, when we first kind of brought this idea together, Script can back me up on this. This is kind of like one of the culminations of it. One of the first things we said is we got to do Road Warrior, we got to get Tom and Vernon. So we're glad we made it happen, and we got to thank you for that most of all.
Oh, absolutely. You know, check out the feature I did with him, Trouble Is My Business at troubleismy.biz. I think it's in the thing. And next year, we want your support. I'm going for a trifecta. I'm going to try and reunite Mel with Vernon and myself for this space pirate movie that we're doing. And we're reaching out to him, and I'm in the middle of developing Island in the Stars. It will be an Australian production. We're going to take it down there and do it. And I will hope that everybody here at Midnight's Edge will support us and be there for us as we start to raise funding and go shoot this thing. But I hope to hopefully even bring in Bruce Spence at some point. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I really have to see this movie. I was working on the script to it right before this show, and the guy Mike Smith that I'm writing it with was like, damn, we need to see this movie. It's really good. And I was like, yeah, I know.
Us from the set because we'll be trying to get in.
You got to come down and we'll do some live streaming from the set. But I had a blast talking about Road Warrior. Anybody, please support that film. Go out, find the 4K version. You said, Tom, you said there's a new version out now?
Yeah, it just come out a couple of weeks ago. There was a sound issue, but Warner's working on it, I guess. But that was just with the original stereo track. The other
surround sound is okay. The 5.1.
Yeah, all the other stuff is fine. It's out now. Check it out. Very, very well done. And as Mr. Tickletrunk here says, the great Konkle made it even better, and I agree.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to get to talk to Tom, and it was definitely a birthday present to get to talk to Mr. Wells about this movie because it's a great film. And are they pirating ice? Oh, keep talking about ice pirates. That might show up at some point, but I don't know if that's.
This is going to be a space pirate movie. Trust me, this is going to be like a Jules Verne Treasure Island kind of film. But the character that he plays is his bucket list character. So it's going to be a barn burner. And if I can get him and Gibson in the same scene sometime, it's going to be amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, can't wait to dig into that and see what that's all about and report on that and whatever else we are involved with in that. And we want to thank you for being involved with this, of course, Mr. Konkle, as always, and Script and I to the chat. Thank you so much for being here. Script, I don't know if you have anything coming up anytime soon you want to plug, but I'm sure people should check out your channel as well as Mr. Konkle's.
Yeah, check out my channel. After the Christmas, weekend, I should have some new content dropping on there, and I hope you guys, hope all of you guys enjoy it. But yeah, for now, I'm just plugging away at all these other things, trying to make some great scripts better, and working all the way on that.
All right, and keep your suggestions coming in, guys. We've been taking those down, and we're going to get to more. I don't know what the next one is going to be. We may, I think next week being Christmas Day, I think we're taking that off, right, Script? Or what's the...
I will be with family that day. So
I assume so. Yeah, so we'll probably have next week off, but we'll definitely let you guys know what we come up with for New Year's, which will be the next in between there sometimes. We'll see if the next week or the week after we'll have a show, but we'll definitely let you know. I'll throw something up in the community tab to let you guys know what's going on there. But until then, I want to thank you for joining us, and thank Tom and Mr. Wells, of course, for joining us as well today. Thanks again, guys, for listening, and take care of yourselves and each other, and have a happy holiday.
Take care.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.